20 mysterious home features that are no longer used. Ever noticed a tiny door, a hidden button, or a switch that seems out of place in an old house? These odd features once served smart, everyday purposes, long before modern tech took over. Stick around as we uncover the clever, forgotten home innovations that made life easier, room by room. Coal chute door. If you've ever walked by an old house and spotted a small iron door near the bottom of the wall, you might have paused and wondered what it was for. It's not just some odd leftover hardware, it's a coal chute door, once a key part of daily life in homes that used coal to stay warm. Before central heating systems were common, folks had to keep a steady supply of coal on hand, especially during the cold winters. Coal delivery men would come by, open that little door, and shovel coal down a chute straight into the basement. From there, the homeowner would grab a shovel and feed the coal into the furnace to keep the house heated. This setup was especially common in northern cities and areas with harsh winters, where coal was the go-to fuel source for decades. But as cleaner and more convenient options like gas and electric heating took over, coal furnaces started disappearing, and so did the need for those chute doors. Still, you can often spot them today, usually sealed shut or rusting quietly in place. Some homeowners keep them visible as a reminder of their home's past, giving a little peek into how people once braved the cold. Wall plates. Ever notice those odd metal shapes stuck to the outside of old houses? They might look decorative, but they actually had a serious job. Called wall plates, these pieces were usually made of cast or wrought iron, and they weren't just for show. They were essential for keeping homes standing. Back in the day, these plates were part of a clever support system that kept walls from leaning, bowing out, or even collapsing. They were connected to long iron rods that ran straight through the building, acting like giant internal braces. This setup helped hold everything tight. It was especially important for brick and stone homes, which didn't have much flexibility and could crack under pressure. Before we had steel frames, concrete reinforcements, or high-tech materials, builders had to rely on these old-school methods to keep houses stable. Wall plates did the trick for decades, but with modern construction techniques, those iron fixtures are no longer needed. Still, if you spot them on a historic home, you're seeing a clever piece of structural engineering from the past that helped buildings stand the test of time. Ice door. Ever spot a small, odd-looking door at the back of an old house and wonder what it was for? Maybe it opened into a pantry or tiny storage space, and inside you found another door with a lock on the inside. If so, you've likely discovered an old ice door, a leftover from the days before electric fridges. Back then, people used ice boxes to keep food cold. These were basically insulated cabinets that used huge blocks of ice to chill the inside. To keep things running smoothly, ice delivery men made regular rounds, dropping off fresh blocks. Instead of tracking water and mess through the main part of the house, many homes had a special door, usually at the side or back, that let the delivery guy slide the ice straight into the box from outside. And if you've ever heard someone from an older generation call the fridge an ice box, now you know the history behind it. That name stuck around long after the technology changed. Today, ice doors are rare to find, but when you do see one, it's a cool piece of the past. Back when staying cold meant daily deliveries and clever home design. Built-in phone nooks. Back before smartphones took over and everyone had wireless everything, landline phones were a must in every home. But these weren't small or portable, they were big, clunky devices, sometimes with separate parts like an earpiece and a rotary dial. That's why so many older houses came with built-in phone nooks, little recessed spots made just for the family phone. You'd usually find these nooks in a hallway or right off the living room, so everyone in the house could get to the phone quickly. Most had a small shelf to hold the essentials, like a phone book, a notepad, and a pen, because making a call often meant taking notes or writing down a number. Some even came with a little bench underneath, giving folks a place to sit while chatting. These days, of course, nobody needs a special spot for a landline, but many of those old phone nooks are still around. Homeowners now use them for fun or function. Some display vintage phones while others fill them with mail, houseplants, or little decorations. The Laundry Chute. If you've ever lived in an older two-story house, you might remember the joy of having a laundry chute. It was a simple idea, but a smart one. No more dragging heavy baskets of clothes down the stairs. You just opened a little door, tossed the dirty laundry in, and let gravity do the work, sending everything straight to the laundry room below. Laundry chutes were especially popular in homes built from the early to mid-1900s, when multi-story living was common and families valued practical design. Most chutes had a small, hinged door in the hallway or bathroom that opened into a smooth, enclosed shaft. Clothes would slide right down to the basement or utility room, saving time and effort on laundry day. Even though they were super handy, you don't see them much in new homes. Some say concerns about kids crawling inside led to their decline, while others think it's just because more modern houses have laundry rooms upstairs now. But lately, there's been a small comeback. Some homeowners are choosing to add laundry chutes to their homes again. It just goes to show, sometimes the old ways really were the smartest. Maybe it's time they made a full return. To continue with more content, comment 1 to let us know you're still following. Landline phone, jack ... If you've got an older house, you've probably seen those little square outlets tucked around the place. In the kitchen, bedrooms, hallway, maybe even the basement. They're landline phone jacks, and while they were once a must-have in every home, they've mostly faded into history thanks to the rise of cell phones. Before mobile phones became the norm, landlines were the main way to stay connected. Homes often had phone jacks in several rooms, so you could plug in a phone wherever it was most convenient. That way, no matter where you were in the house, you could catch a call. Some families even had separate lines, one for work, one for the kids, or just to avoid a busy signal. Nowadays, since nearly everyone has a smartphone in their pocket, these old jacks mostly just sit there, collecting dust. A few folks still keep a landline for emergencies, but most people don't use them at all. Knob and tube wiring. If you've ever had a look inside the walls or ceilings of an old house, especially one from between 1880 and 1930, you might have spotted a strange and outdated wiring setup. That's knob and tube wiring, one of the first systems used to bring electricity into American homes. The design was pretty basic. Copper wires with a single layer of insulation ran through open spaces behind walls and above ceilings. When the wires needed to pass through wood beams, little porcelain tubes kept them from touching the wood. Porcelain knobs were used to anchor the wires and stop them from drooping or brushing against surfaces. At the time, this setup was seen as both clever and safe. But fast forward to today, and knob and tube is considered a major fire risk. It just can't handle the electrical load modern households demand. It also doesn't have a grounding wire, and the old insulation tends to dry out and crack over time. While some old houses still have it, most experts say it should be replaced with a newer, safer system. Pittsburgh Potty. If you've ever explored the basement of a home built before World War II, you might have come across something odd. A single toilet sitting right out in the open, with no walls, no privacy, and usually no sink or shower nearby. These are often called Pittsburgh Potties, though they showed up in lots of industrial cities, not just Pittsburgh. These unusual basement toilets date back to a time when steelworkers, miners, and other laborers came home filthy after long, grueling shifts. Instead of bringing all that dirt and grime through the house, they'd come in through the basement, use the toilet, maybe wash up in a utility sink or under a makeshift shower, and then head upstairs clean. It was a smart, practical setup that helped keep the main living areas and bathrooms free of mess. Nowadays, most of these basement toilets have either been taken out or walled in to add a little privacy. But every now and then, you'll still find one sitting there by itself. A strange little piece of the past. It's a funny sight today, but back then it made perfect sense. That lone toilet tells a story of hard work, practicality, and a time when cleanliness meant more than comfort. Push-button light switches. Push-button light switches might look like a quaint vintage touch today, but when they first showed up in the late 1800s, they were considered cutting edge. These switches had two buttons. Press one to turn the light on, the other to turn it off. Simple, stylish, and a big step up from the older rotary-style switches of the time. They became especially popular in the early 1900s, adding a bit of flair and modernity to any room. But they weren't perfect. One common issue was that the buttons could get stuck. As the internal parts wore down, you could end up with a light that wouldn't turn off, or one that wouldn't come on at all. And in some cases, faulty connections could even lead to overheating, which made them a fire risk. Even with those issues, push-button switches never totally disappeared. People restoring historic homes often go looking for them to keep the original look intact. Luckily, modern versions are available now, made with safer materials and more reliable parts. They bring that old-time charm, but without the old-time problems. So while the originals might be rare, their style is still glowing today. Ceiling beds. Ever seen a bed lower down from the ceiling? While it might sound like something out of a modern tiny apartment trend, this clever idea actually goes way back. Ceiling beds, sometimes nicknamed swirling beds, were once real contenders to the better-known Murphy bed. They were built to save space without giving up an entire wall or closet. Back in 1913, someone patented a ceiling-mounted bed that worked with a hidden counterweight system inside the walls. All you had to do was turn a crank by hand, and the bed would gently lower into place. Once it was down, you could pull out folding legs to keep it sturdy for sleeping. Come morning, the bed would crank right back up, disappearing into the ceiling and clearing the room for daytime use. While these beds never became quite as popular as their Murphy cousins, they were a smart solution for tight spaces. And now, as more people live in small apartments and get creative with their layouts, the idea is popping up again, with modern upgrades. The original ceiling beds may belong to the past, but the idea of making the most of every inch of space is definitely still going strong. Which forgotten home feature would you bring back? And which one gave you nightmares as a child? Boot scrapers. If you've ever seen a small iron piece sitting near the front steps of an old house and wondered what it was for, chances are it was a boot scraper. Back in the days before paved roads and cars, these little fixtures were a must-have. With dirt roads, rain, and horse-drawn travel, your shoes could get pretty filthy fast. Before walking into the house, folks would use the scraper to get mud, grime, and yes, even horse droppings off their boots. They were usually set into the sidewalk or mounted near the doorway, making it easy to clean your shoes before stepping inside. This was especially helpful when carpets and rugs were expensive and hard to clean. As streets were paved and horses gave way to automobiles, the need for boot scrapers faded. They just weren't as useful anymore, but if you stroll through an old neighborhood, you might still catch a glimpse of one. They're small, sturdy relics of another time, offering a peek into the everyday routines of people who had to deal with messes modern life has mostly swept away. Milk doors. If you've ever noticed a small, curious door built into the side of an old house and wondered what it was for, chances are it was a milk door. Back when milk was delivered daily, before refrigerators were common, these little doors made the process smooth, safe, and hands-free. Before grocery stores and refrigeration changed how we shop and store food, milkmen delivered fresh bottles right to your home every morning. The milk door, usually located near the kitchen or pantry, allowed them to drop off full bottles and pick up the empties without bothering anyone inside. No knocking, no mess, and no need to leave milk sitting outside in the sun or cold. Some milk doors even had simple insulation to help keep the milk cool for a little while, at least until someone inside came to collect it. It was a small but thoughtful design that made everyday life more convenient. Today, milk delivery is mostly a thing of the past, and these doors are often sealed up, used for decoration, or hidden behind cabinets. Still, they remain a charming glimpse into a time when fresh milk showed up at your door like clockwork. No texting, no apps, just a knock and a clink of glass. Root cellars. Before modern refrigerators came along, keeping food from spoiling, especially during extreme weather, was a real challenge. That's where root cellars came into play. These cool, dark spaces were a smart way to store fruits, veggies, and other perishables so they'd last through the seasons. Most root cellars were dug underground or built partially below ground, using the Earth's natural insulation to keep temperatures steady and cool all year long. Some were completely separate from the main house, looking like little dugouts with stone or wooden doors. Others were tucked into a basement corner. The key was good ventilation and the right humidity, which helped stop food from rotting too fast. Although refrigerators have mostly replaced them, root cellars haven't completely disappeared. In some rural homes or homesteads, people still rely on them to stash fresh produce, aged cheese, or store wine. While no longer a household staple, root cellars offer a neat look back at how families once worked with nature to keep food fresh, long before flipping a switch cooled everything down. Razor blade disposal slots. If you've ever poked around the medicine cabinet in an older home and noticed a tiny, narrow slot in the back, you weren't looking at a design quirk. That little opening was actually a built-in razor blade disposal slot, something most homes had back when men shaved with double-edged safety razors. Back then, changing out dull blades was a regular part of shaving, but tossing them in the trash wasn't safe. So the solution was simple. Just slip the used blade through the slot in the cabinet. It would drop straight into the empty wall space behind it where it couldn't hurt anyone. It seemed like a smart fix at the time. No cuts, no mess, and no clutter. But since there was no way to retrieve them, those old blades just piled up out of sight. Today, many older homes still have a quiet stash of rusty razor blades hidden in the walls, only discovered during remodeling or demolition. While we've moved on to safer disposal methods, those little slots remain as curious reminders of how people once solved everyday problems in surprisingly creative ways. Dumbwaiters. If you've ever seen a small lift tucked into the wall of an old house, you might have stumbled upon a dumbwaiter. These little elevators weren't for people. They were built to move things like food, dishes, or laundry between floors. In big houses, especially ones where the kitchen was on a different level than the dining room, dumbwaiters made life a whole lot easier. They worked with a simple pulley system. Ropes and counterweights helped lift and lower the platform smoothly. Wealthy families often had them, and so did places like hotels or restaurants where fast, quiet service was key. Today, while most homes don't use them anymore, some newer houses and businesses still install updated versions. In older homes, though, they're usually just sitting there, sealed up, turned into closets, or forgotten behind a wall. And let's be honest, more than a few kids have probably treated one like a secret elevator just for fun. Dumbwaiters might not be essential these days, but they're a cool piece of the past that shows how homes were designed to make work a little easier. Be honest, who tried to ride a dumbwaiter like it was a secret elevator to Narnia? Transom windows. If you've ever stepped into an old house and noticed a narrow pane of glass sitting above a door, you've spotted a transom window. These small windows were once a staple in home design, and while they look decorative, they had some very practical uses, especially in the days before electricity and air conditioning. Back then, natural light was everything. Interior spaces like hallways or windowless rooms could get dark fast. A transom window let daylight pass from room to room, brightening up areas that would otherwise feel gloomy. But it wasn't just about the light. Many transoms were designed to open. This made a big difference in airflow, allowing warm air to rise and escape while pulling in cooler air from other parts of the house. Before HVAC systems came along, that bit of extra ventilation could really help keep a home more comfortable, especially during hot summers. Though modern homes don't need them for function anymore, transoms haven't vanished. People still love them for their vintage beauty and the way they enhance natural light. In fact, some new homes are starting to feature them again, proof that a good idea never truly goes out of style. Servant stairs. If you've ever walked through an old house and noticed a narrow staircase tucked behind the kitchen or pantry, you've likely found what's called a servant staircase. These hidden stairs were designed so household staff could move between floors without being seen by the family or guests, Back in the 18th and 19th centuries, large homes ran on a strict social structure, even within the walls. While the family used the wide, elegant main staircase, the servants used these smaller, steeper steps to go about their work quietly and out of view. They weren't built for comfort or looks, just to get the job done. Today, you won't find servant stairs in most modern homes, but the idea hasn't totally disappeared. On cruise ships, for example, there are still separate stairwells and passageways just for the crew, keeping operations smooth behind the scenes. Though they've mostly faded from daily life, these secret staircases give us a revealing peek into how homes were once carefully designed around both luxury and labor. Picture rails. If you've ever spotted a narrow strip of molding running just below the ceiling in an older house, you've come across a picture rail. These elegant yet highly functional features were a staple in 19th century home design, offering a clever solution for displaying art without damaging fragile plaster walls. Back in the mid-1800s, plaster was widely used for interior walls, but it had a major drawback. It was delicate. Hammering a nail directly into it could lead to unsightly cracks or even cause parts of the wall to crumble. Picture rails fixed that problem beautifully. Mounted along the upper part of the wall, these rails allowed movable hooks to slide along the molding. Wires or cords were attached to the hooks and used to suspend framed pictures or mirrors, creating a flexible and damage-free way to decorate. This system made it easy to rearrange artwork whenever you liked. No patching holes or repainting required. By the 1940s, sturdier materials like drywall became standard, and people grew more comfortable putting nails straight into the wall. As a result, picture rails slowly went out of style. Today, they're making a quiet comeback, not just in historic homes, but also in modern spaces where homeowners appreciate both their vintage charm and practical flexibility. They add character, function, and a touch of timeless elegance to any room. Pocket doors. Pocket doors were a smart and space-saving feature that let homeowners enjoy the best of both worlds. An open floor plan when they wanted it, and private separated rooms when they didn't. Instead of swinging open and taking up precious floor space, these doors slid right into the wall, disappearing from view. This made them ideal for smaller rooms, hallways, or areas where every inch counted. They were especially popular in older homes where flexible layouts were valued, and formal spaces could be closed off with ease. Pocket doors made transitions between rooms smooth and practical, all without the bulky footprint of a traditional door. Over time, though, they fell out of favor in modern construction, partly due to changes in building techniques and preferences for wide-open layouts. But with today's growing interest in efficient multifunctional spaces, especially in smaller homes and apartments, pocket doors are starting to gain attention again. They're not just functional, they also add a touch of classic style and clever design. With modern hardware and sleeker designs available, pocket doors just might be ready for a well-deserved comeback in today's homes. The charm and purpose of room layouts in older homes. If you've ever walked through an older house, you might have noticed that the rooms feel small, oddly shaped, and separated by lots of doors. It's a big contrast to today's open floor plans, but back then there was a reason for that layout. Privacy and energy efficiency were key priorities in home design. Each room in those homes had a specific job: dining, sleeping, entertaining, and doors made it easy to keep things private. If guests came over, a closed door meant personal spaces stayed personal. Conversations in one room didn't carry into another, and everyone had their own quiet corner. But there was a bigger reason for all those doors: temperature control. Before modern HVAC systems, people heated their homes with fireplaces, wood stoves, or simple heaters. Keeping doors shut helped trap heat where it was needed and stop it from drifting into empty rooms. In the summer, it worked the other way around. Cooler air could be kept in certain rooms, offering a bit of relief from the heat. While today's open concept layouts offer a bright, spacious feel, the design of older homes reminds us that smart planning wasn't just about looks. It was about making everyday life easier, warmer, and more private. Servant floor buttons. If you ever tour an old mansion and spot a tiny button tucked into the floor, maybe under a rug or beneath the dining table, you've likely come across a servant floor button. These little buttons were once a clever, quiet way for homeowners to summon help without saying a word or getting up from their chair. Back in the 1800s and early 1900s, especially in grand dining rooms, formal meals were treated like events. Everything needed to run smoothly and without disruption. So these buttons were placed right where the host or hostess could tap them with their foot. With a quick press, a bell or buzzer would ring in the kitchen or servants' quarters, signaling the staff that it was time to bring in the next course, refill drinks, or clear the table. These systems helped keep everything flowing while preserving the formal, elegant atmosphere. No shouting, no hand-waving, just a discreet signal and prompt service. While most of these buttons no longer function, many still exist, hidden under carpets or furniture waiting to be discovered. They're fascinating reminders of how homes were once carefully organized to blend convenience with social etiquette. Today, we use smart speakers, wireless call buttons, or intercoms, but the idea hasn't changed much. Press a button, get assistance. Just with less velvet and more Wi-Fi. Home intercom systems. If you've ever walked through a house built in the 1970s or earlier, you might have spotted an old intercom system mounted on the wall, maybe in the kitchen, hallway, or even by the front door. These wired devices were once considered cutting edge, giving families an easy way to talk between rooms without raising their voices. Back then, especially in larger homes, intercoms made it simple to check in with someone upstairs, call the kids to dinner, or speak to a visitor without walking across the house. Some setups even included a front door speaker, so you could chat with whoever was outside before deciding whether to let them in. It was a big step forward in home convenience and communication. But as technology moved forward, these systems started to fade. With smartphones, smart speakers, and video doorbells now handling everything from room-to-room chatter to front door security, those old wired intercoms just aren't needed anymore. Today, many are left hanging on the wall as quiet reminders of a time when talking through the house required a bit of built-in hardware. While they might not be in use, they still add a retro charm and a bit of tech nostalgia to any vintage home. Did we miss a hidden gem from the past? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this trip through forgotten home features, check out the rest of the series. Don't forget to subscribe and share Past Not Past with a friend who loves history. Thanks so much for watching.